The night the river almost took her life, the city forgot its own name. Rain stitched the darkness together, sirens echoed like broken promises, and the water rose with a hunger that had no mercy. She was a woman the world bowed to by day, a CEO whose signature could lift companies or end them, but in that moment she was only a body fighting the cold, a heart slamming against panic, a breath slipping away. The river grabbed her ankle, twisted her down, and the last thing she saw was the blur of streetlights shattering on the surface like stars drowning. Then arms wrapped around her, strong and shaking, pulling her back from the mouth of the night. Before the story goes any further, pause for a second. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of strangers showing up for one another, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this connect hearts across the world. The man who dragged her out of the river was named Daniel Carter. He did not look like a hero. His jacket was thin and soaked through, his hands were rough and red, and there was a tremor in his arms that came not from weakness but from the weight of a life always held together by effort. He was a single father who worked nights driving deliveries and mornings packing lunches, who measured time in school bells and overdue bills. He had been walking home after a double shift when he heard the scream that wasn't quite a scream, the sound people make when fear steals their voice. He did not think of consequences or recognition. He thought of his daughter's face when she slept, the way her hair fell over her eyes, and he ran. They sat on the riverbank afterward, the rain thinning into a cold mist. She coughed and shook, and he wrapped his jacket around her without hesitation. She noticed then how he kept glancing at his phone, not in impatience but in worry, as if a small universe waited for him somewhere else. An ambulance came, lights painting their faces blue and red, and the city remembered how to breathe again. She was taken away, and he returned to his life with wet shoes and a quiet ache in his chest, never expecting to see her again. Her name was Eleanor Whitmore, and by morning the news called her a miracle. They spoke of resilience and leadership, of how the CEO of a global firm had survived a freak accident. They did not speak of the man who smelled like rain and asphalt, who had gone home to a one-bedroom apartment and apologized to his daughter for being late, who tucked her in with stories about brave explorers and promised pancakes on Sunday. Eleanor watched the footage from her hospital bed, the river replayed from 100 angles, and felt something heavy settle in her chest. She knew the truth of that night lived in hands that had trembled and held on anyway. Recovery slowed her down in ways success never had. Bruises bloomed and faded. Sleep came in fragments. In the quiet, she thought about the question she had asked him as consciousness returned, a strange sentence born of shock and vulnerability, a plea wrapped in embarrassment and fear. It was not about bodies or desire, not really. It was about whether someone would stay when she had nothing left to offer but her raw, unarmored self. That question followed her like a shadow, asking who she was without the armor of titles and tailored suits. She found him through a nurse who remembered a name scribbled on a clipboard. When Eleanor reached out, it was not with grand gestures but with a simple request to meet. Daniel arrived uneasy, his best shirt ironed with care, his daughter Lily waiting at home with a neighbor and a list of rules he had written twice to make sure nothing went wrong. He expected thanks. He did not expect to be seen. Their meetings were quiet at first, conversations stitched together by pauses. Eleanor listened more than she spoke. She learned about Lily's asthma, about nights spent calculating which bill could wait, about a pride that made asking for help feel like failure. Daniel learned about boardrooms and loneliness, about a childhood that taught Eleanor to be unbreakable and a career that punished softness. They were two people standing on opposite banks of the same river, surprised to find a bridge. Life tested them quickly. Rumors bloomed in Eleanor's world, whispers about favoritism and scandal that could bruise a company's stock. Advisors urged distance. Daniel's life tightened too, a sudden cut in routes that meant fewer hours, a school note about Lily needing a specialist he could not afford. The old patterns called them back, telling Eleanor to protect the fortress and Daniel to carry his load alone. But something had shifted. The Knight of the River had rearranged their priorities in a way neither could undo. Eleanor began to change the way she led, not with speeches but with decisions. She created programs that didn't carry her name, opportunities that reached people like Daniel without strings attached. She learned the courage of staying present, of showing up without the guarantee of control. Daniel learned that accepting help did not erase his worth. He learned that strength could look like trust, like allowing someone to see the cracks and not turning away. The bond between them deepened, not in fireworks but in steady light. Weekend walks with Lily, laughter that surprised them both, silences that felt safe. Eleanor saw how Daniel folded his life around his daughter with a tenderness that had nothing to do with wealth. Daniel saw how Eleanor, stripped of ceremony, was learning to rest, to breathe, to be human. They faced setbacks that would have ended lesser stories, nights of doubt when the river seemed to rise again in memory, cold and unforgiving. And each time, they chose to stay. Years passed like seasons learning a new rhythm. Eleanor's company thrived, not because she hardened herself but because she let compassion guide her. Daniel built a steadier life, training for a role that paid less in pride and more in peace. Lily grew, bright and curious, asking questions about stars and storms and why people sometimes need saving. The question that had hovered over Eleanor since the river found its answer in ordinary moments, in shared meals, in quiet drives, in the simple promise of presence. As this story draws near its close, if it has touched your heart, if it reminded you that rescue doesn't always look like a headline and love doesn't always arrive with certainty, please take a moment to like, share, and engage with this video. Your support helps stories of hope find the people who need them most. And before the ending, leave a comment and tell us one moment in your life when someone stayed for you, or when you chose to stay for someone else. The river still runs through the city, indifferent and eternal, but it no longer owns their fear. Eleanor sometimes stands on the bridge at dusk, watching the water carry reflections of lights and lives forward. Daniel stands beside her, Lily between them, a small hand in each of theirs. The night that nearly ended everything became the beginning of a life built on staying, on choosing one another without armor, on believing that when kindness reaches out in the dark, it can pull us all back into the light.